I got the beer, I got the crucifix, and I got my Bible right here. Why? Because I am a free man, dang it.
Woo! Yay for
Amen, amen.
freedom! What's
And
that line
welcome,
from
one and
Braveheart?
all, on YouTube and in podcast land. You are listening to the Tangent Kings. Roll it. Welcome, one and all, to the Tangent Kings podcast. I am G. Michael Francis, and I am here with my partner in crime, Mr. J.J. Benks. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, Mike. How you doing?
Oh, I'm living the dream, one nightmare at a time. But
That's great.
I couldn't help it. One of those things I picked up in the service, and I just had to go with it.
Perchance, have you been living a modern art masterpiece?
Well, I wouldn't call it that messed up.
Hey, look, I'm Picasso.
I
You
don't get it.
uncultured swine. What are you looking at, you hockey puck? That's a line from Toy Story Children.
I'm pretty
Anyway.
sure. I'm pretty sure most people would get that.
Most people still do. Well, come back in 10 years, like, what's a Toy Story? Like, and then I'm like, God, now I really do feel old. What can you do?
Heck, I already feel old just rolling out of bed this morning, and my back hurts.
Your back hurts. Is
I'm
your
only
sciatica
26.
kicking in?
I'm only 26. This shouldn't be happening.
I'm 26. I don't get backaches that bad. Yeah,
But
yeah, absolutely. What do we
Shall I
got on
go-
what do we got on our show tonight, Mike?
well, I figured tonight we talk about freedom and free will.
Yeehaw.
Well, yeah, and then we'll see whatever we could come up with if we have time. Then we'll hit that book quote, and we'll call it a night. How's that sound?
That sounds good. You just stay clear of my gosh darn Second Amendment there, bud. Me and Me2A, which is the name of my Nerf gun right here, we are about to go on a cattle shooting spree, boys! Yeehaw! I love the South, man.
And I'm the one drinking the beer.
You're living in the South. I even had a drink today, too. The last drink I had was like, I had a can of Strongbow, and that's like hard cider. And I was sipping that like 3 days ago, and I was just sipping that can for a bit. No, I was going to say at work today, I ran into how about a gentleman, he's from Arkansas. And we were going to chat. He said he moved up here to be with his first wife, and they got a divorce, and then he met his second wife, and he has been living up here in Minnesota for, what do I want to say, 30 years now. And he said, I've been up here for so long, and I still don't like the cold. And I'm like, hey, I was born here, man, and I don't like the cold either. The snow is only pretty when you're looking at it from the inside. You step out of it, you're like, oh my God, no snow, please, no snow. I like snow, but I don't like driving in it and the cold that comes with it. It's just not fun.
In my opinion, snow was fun until after Christmas.
Yep.
Then it got annoying.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's more mild, like you go to other states where you've got more mild snow. I mean, it's not like we get pounded with it, but Minnesota seems like it's bipolar weather some days of the year, or some seasons. Like we had a polar vortex like 2 years ago, I want to say 3 years ago. I think it was 2.
7.
And it was horrible. It was horrible. We had that. And anyway, go ahead.
If I remember correctly, it was 7 years ago, dude. Back in 2013.
2013? No, we had a polar vortex up here in Minnesota where it was just like Arctic temperatures up here for a little bit, and then like ungodly amounts of snow, and it was constantly freezing all the time, tons of black ice. No, that was 2019, I should say. Yeah, that was Um,
Oh, so you had another one?
December 29th. Yeah, we did. It was, I think it was 2019. No, 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 no. My mistake. It was 2018. Yeah, it was cold 2019 for sure in the winter, but the polar vortex was. I think that was 2018. But anyway, it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. But he anyway. So the point I was going to make with the guy, he said that I said, "What are some things you notice about being up here in the north?" And he said, like, culture's different. And I'm just like, "Oh, you mean how everyone in Minnesota is like kind of standoffish and doesn't really want to talk to you longer than 30 seconds?" He's like, "Yeah, exactly." Like you can actually have a conversation with people in the South. Like, yeah, it's like they actually want to talk to you and say, "Hey, how's your life, boy?" And you're like, "Ah, it's good. Everything's fantastic. Thank you." Not that they talk in Irish accents in the South, but just like there's a sense of like, I want to actually know how your life's going, and I can actually have a conversation, and you're just warmer. So maybe it's a climate thing, maybe it's a people thing, but it's.
I
I
think
said
it's
to
more
him,
of a people
I want to go
thing.
down. Yeah, less taxes, more weather warmth, and more human warmth. Count me in. Like even over in Wisconsin, they seem like they're just warmer people, and not like, "Well, I'm an introvert and I don't really want to talk to you because I'm awkward and I got my skinny jeans and my pants are too tight. And I'm from Edina. I drive a BMW that I bought in Germany with my
Well,
expensive $3,000 wine."
well,
But we, not that if
it
people
kind of
from
reminds.
Edina actually talk like that, but it's like, it's like, it's close enough. What were you going to say?
I was just saying, just from my memories of living in Minnesota. Now, I actually divided Minnesota into three zones. You got your lower portion, then you got Minneapolis and Central, and then you got your northern portion. And I label them as follows. The southern portion is the heartland, American heartland. You got
Mm-hmm.
farms, you got nice fields of corn, wheat, you name it. And then you get into Minneapolis. This is the cultured side of Minneapolis. And then you got the northern part of Minnesota, which I call RNC. RNC, Republican National Committee. Nope, Redneck Canada.
Redneck Canada, yeah!
The only
It
place where
kind of
I've ever
is.
heard the only place in the world I have ever heard the words y'all and a used in the same sentence.
Okay, that needs to go on a t-shirt. Y'all and A. Oh man, it's like we got our own vocabulary up here.
Yeah,
Anyway,
y'all are going to Minneapolis, eh?
I just realized something that we're probably like 8 minutes in this into our show here, and
Nine
since we're
minutes.
not sharing a feed, I haven't even like explained to the audience why I'm wearing a audio cap. I haven't even explained this at all. The answer is for no freaking reason. Anyway, now that I've addressed that, now that the elephant in the room has been addressed, also, what's this? It's a map of something I made. Don't ask stupid questions. Next question. Anyway. You didn't. I put up this map of my of the thing that'll be unnamed this episode. We'll do another episode on it. But yeah, Mike, you didn't get a chance to see it on the. I got this thing on the wall. It's really cool. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, yeah. So we got that, and yeah, people from China. And yeah, but just in the South in general, it's kind of nice. Just I mean, even going to Missouri, right? It's like, oh, it's like people are taking themselves so seriously. I'm like, oh, thank God. Um, but yeah, I really want to come down to Tennessee and see if it's a good place to move to, and maybe we'll go on to Texas, or maybe we'll stay in Tennessee, or maybe we'll check out Georgia. I don't know, but
Well,
find
I'm
somewhere with a nice beachfront property to move to and build a life over there.
I'm just saying, dude. If you move to Tennessee, editing will be a lot easier.
Well, it's funny. So I was doing research on off the grid housing, and because I thought, well, okay, well, hypothetically, if a police state ever took over the United States, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
that, okay, you have like everything's monitored, and you have in order for you to participate in society or have a job, you have to follow super authoritarian rules for everything you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the government just it's like it's a command economy from the government, if the United States ever turned into that, it's like, well, what's my option? What can I do? I'm like, well, I could go off the grid. And believe it or not, this one of the states that kept coming up consistently in all the charts and videos that I watched, Tennessee was up there. Tennessee is one of the best states in the union right now to make it off the grid living.
This
I thought,
what?
I thought, well, let's
Why
find
does
a plot of land and let's see if we can find something over the next 10 years.
why does this not surprise me that Tennessee is one of the best ones for living off the grid? Anyway,
What is the
can we
government
actually
like
get?
over there? Like,
Uh, well, it's fairly red and not in a communist fashion.
wait,
You still have your blue segments. You still have blue sections like in Nashville, Knoxville. Places like the major metropolitan areas are well do tend to be fairly liberal, but
mm-hmm.
everybody else it's conservative for the most part with a capital C.
Yay! More conservatism, less Republicans. Yay! But anyway, I'm still salty
Shall we
about the
actually?
spineless Republicans that
Mm,
haven't been backing Trump this whole election cycle. You're like, oh my God. But anyway, yes, we're about to go into our main subjects. So I'm ready to go. Aggressive segue into the main subjects uh,
yeah. Our
now.
main. Yep. Let's segue right. I almost said subway again.
Subway.
For those of you who don't know, when we were doing one of our practice episodes, I was trying to say Segway, but I kept saying Subway. Uh,
Eat
eat fresh.
fresh, especially if it's on a motorcade.
Anyway,
Didn't your dad once, like back in CAP, made a joke about Subway in North Korea? You remember that?
yeah, he
I thought
said,
it was your dad.
well, I think I just relayed it onto you, but he said, all we had to do was open contract Subway to make the biggest dang all-you-can-eat buffet on our side of the DMZ, and the whole North Korean army would defect.
That's what he said. I still remember that
Because
scene from the interview. Where they were like, "Oh, look at all the food in the grocery store," and then towards the end, he's just like, "This isn't real food. This is wax."
I think you just blew out your microphone.
I probably did. If I didn't strain my microphone, I definitely strained my vocal cords. So, thanks,
Anyway,
future me. I'll be sounding like Alex Jones in the next 2 years. Infowarstore.com.
anyway, let's get into this before we get too sidetracked,
let's get
shall
into
we?
the show notes. Right, let's get into the show notes.
That's the problem. That's the problem because we are too free to stay on track. Anyway, so
Woo, freedom.
yeah, let's talk about freedom, shall we? And I
Sure.
actually try to reach out to Kamala Harris to get her opinion on freedom.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I went to her house. I tried to knock on the door, but I ran into a little bit of trouble.
Who's them? Who's them?
Yeah, that did not go as smoothly as I hoped it would.
I can imagine. You're like, I want to comment,
Yes.
and come out like, no, I'm busy boiling and bubbling in my witch's brew in my basement. And it's like, that doesn't surprise me. Mike out. There you go.
It well, it's 2020, dude. Nothing surprises me anymore.
Not even this witch ball that I have on my desk. You can see it's made of Amazonite, but it could be a witch ball. Oh, you don't know where you buy these magic stores. I'll show the audience this. At my job at the mall I work at, and we'll get to the freedom in a second. But they have this vendor where they have a ton of just like of all these kind of stones, and some of them uncut, some of them cut and polished, and raw gemstones, I should say. And they got these ones for sale. And this one is a sphere solid Amazonite. It's really, really beautiful. My lower quality webcam can't really capture like the glitteringness too much, but it's really pretty. I'll be upgrading my webcam, I think, in the next, hopefully before we do episode 10, hopefully, but we'll see. Like a higher quality resolution one. But anyway, Yeah, no, it's a really, really pretty stone, and one of my closest friends is going to be getting this as a gift for Christmas. I will not name who because he or she may be watching this show. It's a she, so she could probably figure it out.
Mhm.
But I will not tell you your Christmas gifts yet, Ireland. But yeah, no, that's fantastic. But anyway, yeah, getting back to the main show notes, obviously. So we kind of we had a couple ideas on what we wanted to talk about. It's like, do we want to talk about economics? And I said, well, that's fun, but I'm not an economist, and I haven't been. I could talk in general terms about economics, and like I want to kind of talk about something a little bit more philosophical, something a little bit more. We can kind of tie more back into Christianity and kind of not just Christian philosophy, but just like how people could be and should be kind of thing versus like economics. We can kind of do as a bigger show when we get back into reading some Autonomous Soul. So we said, okay, maybe we'll do economics next time. We could talk about the election next time because that's already enough people kind of talking about the election right now, and we kind of want to do some different content. So I said, how about freedom? And I'm like, that's a good idea. So.
Mhm.
How do we we throw on the term freedom a lot, and it's in a lot of cases sometimes a political buzzword, but when you think, Mike, when you think of the term freedom, what kind of comes to mind?
Well, first of all, I actually dive into what you know into what my opinion of freedom is. Let's first lay a foundation. Let's establish what we mean by free will,
Right.
because that's an important component to our freedom. And in my view, and if you disagree with me, that's fine. But free will is our ability to make choices and act on them. Simple enough.
Right, of course.
It's and I don't know if there's anything I can add to that. I left a big old blank space in my notes, to try to add on to it, but there's nothing more I can add on to it.
Right.
But this plays into freedom. And
Absolutely, yeah. Like,
in my
of
view,
course.
like
Because essentially, what free will, free will, what it all kind of boils down to is that it's the ability to choose, right? It's the ability to choose and make a decision on your own, right? Having the ability to not only just be accountable to yourself, right? That kind of ties into it, but just like you have the capacity to go make your own decisions and have your own consequences and have your own responsibility versus like someone from some kind of authority figure saying you are only allowed to do this, you're only allowed to do that, you're only allowed to do that, right? Like if you want to go live your life a certain way, you have the ability to freely choose that you want to live your life in a certain way with the understanding that the consequences, whether good or bad, are ultimately going to be on you. And it's a very empowering perspective when you say, I am the good in my life and the bad in my life, ultimately, in a lot of ways, ultimately come from me, or that I have a hand in the good and the bad being in my life. And that actually kind of ties into what I've been listening to on G.K. Chesterton's book, What's Wrong with the World, which I think we mentioned last week very briefly, that he was saying that, and I'm going to paraphrase him a little bit, but he said that he was talking a little bit about the philosophy of people. And he's talking about Hudge and Gudge, which are his names for, you've got big elitist corporations, right, that have a tendency of like oppressing people, sort of like your stereotypical oil tycoon who might run a country club, and this old man is like scoffs at the poor, look at Donna Crown. And then you've got on the other hand, you've got the sort of, the way Chesterton described it, the sort of skinny, white bearded vegetarian with like with a twirly mustache and the pointed beard, and that's my dad in the corner over there taking the dog out, and who's starry-eyed and looks at you, just like, you see, if everyone was just in a commune and a collective, all the world's problems would disappear. You've got those two kind of extremes there, right? And what he mentioned is that what kind of happens to people is not just that they get caught into these perspectives, but ultimately that that the problems were most individuals, like most people, it's that man itself, it's like we've lost our the way he put it is that man has lost his way, right? Man has lost his way. Man has doesn't know. It kind of hasn't like for the centuries past has kind of known. Okay, I kind of know what I want. I kind of know what the ideal is, and he's lost his way to that. But with the attitude like, well, I kind of know what I'm doing. Never really, but there's this attitude that I kind of know what I'm doing. I know how to get back there. I'm fine. I don't really need help. I don't need God's help. I don't need a transcendent light to guide me to where I need to go. But nowadays, the problem that's occurred is that the way Chesterton put it was that not only has man lost his way, the route home, he's also lost his address. So he doesn't know what he wants, and he doesn't know what he wants, and he doesn't know ultimately how to get there. And so there's what's happened over the years is what I mentioned Hudge and Gudge was that you got these two big forces that seem to be present in everyday society, modern society, where they seem to step in and say, well, you don't know where you're going. I'm going to step in and guide you. But then what you're being guided towards is it's a counterfeit. It's not fulfilling. It's not what you really want or in a sense sort of need. And ultimately, and the whole point I was making with this aside is that man isn't what ultimately traps up a person is his own philosophy. It's because in a lot of ways it's our own fault if our not just if our lives are miserable, but like the results we have in our lives are ultimately a result of our philosophy. Like for example, if you see yourself as a victim, right? Spend your whole life seeing yourself as a victim, you don't see yourself as a victim that it's the whole world's fault for the way I am, or it's the whole world's fault for the way I act, right? It's the whole world's fault for say, oh, I can't succeed because people are being racist to me. I can't succeed because I'm a woman, or I can't succeed because of I'm whatever minority. It doesn't really matter what it is. I mean, maybe even 100 years ago, you might say, I can't succeed because the bourgeoisie is oppressing me. Can you fix the bourgeoisie? No, you can't fix it. So therefore, you're sick and you're helpless and you're in your victim mode and you're just justifying yourself and doing evil to others in a lot of ways, or doing in a lot of ways even evil to yourself, because that's where evil to others, I think, begins is you do a lot of evil to yourself and then you get resentful, so you take it out on other people. But ultimately, it's like we oppress ourselves in a lot of ways. We don't take care of ourselves and we treat ourselves like crap, or we try to do this narcissistic overcorrection where it's like, oh, it's all about me and no one else, or in which narcissism is still like it's not really self-love, it's the illusion of that. And ultimately, what it all kind of adds up to is this framework of self-imposed slavery, or that we follow, big government, big corporations into directions, right, that lead us astray or lead us to our own slavery. We as free creatures, as free agents of God, right, we have the ability, we've been endowed with free will. We can choose, we can make decisions for ourselves, right? We can choose between right and wrong. But the thing is that if you don't know who you are, you don't have an identity, which, as an aside, that's Satan's favorite game. That's the Kingdom of Darkness' favorite game, is to steal your identity, right? But if you don't have your identity, you don't know where you're going, and you don't know what your endpoint is, and you can't even trust your desires or your own senses, because we've been bombarded with so much relentless cynicism and skepticism, right? If you got, I don't have an identity, I don't have a path forward, I can't trust my desires, and it's like you're wandering aimlessly through life like it's a dream, right? If you don't have any of this stuff going for you, it's like you're a boat, you're like a sailboat without a sail caught in a storm. It's like any input, any hard force acting on you will push you in a certain direction. It's like the parable Christ had in the New Testament, where he described building your house on a solid foundation. If you build it on sand, the whole thing's going to sink over and topple because it's never built in anything solid, right? And Christ, not just a relationship with Christ, but God seems to be that solid foundation, because God transcends the world and has the monopoly on truth, because all truth comes from God. But it's all these kind of things in play. But I think the quote that kind of sticks out the most, or that idea, I should say, that was G.K. Chesterton's, was that we do have that sort of self-imposed slavery. I mean, someone even more recent, like Tony J. Schwartz, I think, said this. He said the mind is, and I think he ghost wrote Trump's Art of the Deal. And he's a very talented author. But he had said something to the effect that the mind is what the mind is fed. And if you feed yourself negativity, right, you feed yourself a restrictive philosophy, right, or you feed yourself self-hatred, right, of like you fixate on all the things you hate about yourself or all your mistakes or all the things you've done wrong. That's all your mind becomes, is it's just filled up with this endless negativity and self-hatred to the point where you have no self-esteem because you've eroded it away, which is your fault. But you've also repeated the voices of those that are in your life that are being negative. But it's all these pieces in play. But I think that the biggest thing is that we do have a responsibility, and perhaps the biggest responsibility, to take ownership of our own lives and the results we have, because there's forces out there that will enslave us to either false philosophies or have no qualms promising us an identity or meaning or purpose, and then never granting that. So it's a lot of things, really, really interesting things in play that all kind of tie together that sort of concept of freedom. Which inevitably you get into a discussion of a police state or a totalitarian state. But when you don't have that freedom, but it almost seems like there's this just generally throughout history, you have this force of like something conspiring against mankind to just not just oppress him, but just men and women, obviously, but not just oppress man, but just take advantage of him and put him into a box and humiliate and put people down. It almost seems like there's this malevolent force in history. That was one, for example, that was something really beautiful. For example, in Lord of the Rings, where you've got Sauron, who's the named evildoer in that, and I think in our own world, the string masters have been able to stay in the shadows for an extended period of time, because they ultimately have their roots in the kingdom of darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there's a lot there.
Yeah, there is quite a bit there indeed.
Yeah.
But now, how does free will tie into freedom? And again, I have another, I guess, overly simplistic answer, but what it boils down to, freedom is the correct exercise of free will.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how Bishop Sheen put
I knew
it.
you're going to quote him.
He says, what was that?
Keep going. I just was like, it's going to be a Bishop Sheen quote in 3, 2, 1. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah. Anyway, but it's not necessarily a quote, but he did say something along the lines of, I am free to draw a triangle, provided I give it 3 sides. I'm free to drive a vehicle on the highway, provided I obey the traffic laws. So one is free in the law.
Right.
I mean, you can't draw a 4-sided triangle. That's impossible. Yeah. And it actually goes to an earlier point he had in that same episode. But he says that when it comes to freedom, it comes in 2 parts. There's the freedom from something, i.e., constraint or force, and the freedom for something, meaning you're free for your ends. But the way it boils down in my mind is, when it comes down to the concept of rights, right? Yeah, that's a fun thing to say. We have our rights, our freedom from certain constraints, but those rights come with corresponding responsibilities. For example, I have the right to keep and bear arms, pure and simple. But I also have the responsibility to use those arms in a judicious manner. Now, I can't just, hear that dog barking outside, which she is. I can't just pull out my 22 and pop her off. For
Mike,
just for barking.
How insensitive you are! My inner animal right activist is streaking at you, you monster! Ah! And we keep going.
Yeah, and likewise, we have the freedom of the press. I have the right to report on the news, for example. But I have the responsibility to keep that to reporting on the facts. And yes, just
Right.
the facts. That is the news media's only job. Just the facts, not truth.
Mm-hmm.
You want truth? You got a philosophy department down the hall. Or better yet, you want truth? Here's a good starting point. Holy Bible, Douay-Rheims translation. It's even got a St. Benedict's cross there,
Yay!
Mr. Benks.
No, yeah, and obviously, obviously that just asserting that the Bible is true doesn't inadvertently make it true. That's something that you and I believe. But there's an argument to be made, of course, that for the case of the Bible, just is true.
That's why I called it.
What?
Yeah, no, that's why I called it a starting point.
Yeah.
That's why I called it a starting point.
Because obviously, believing the Bible is true is kind of something you believe if you're already a Christian, if you're already a believer. If you're just, for example, a non-believer, just saying the Bible is like, well, what if I didn't believe in it? Why would I believe in that, right? Why would I just assume it's true just because you say it's true? I used to make a circular reasoning argument that in high school, right? How do you know the Bible's true? Because it says it's true. But why is it true? Because it says it's true. Oh, well, that's great, because literally every other philosophy on the freaking planet says the same thing. Gee whiz, as an atheist, I'm just ready to convert right now, Jacob. Thanks. And I'll be like, wow, this is so easy. It's like, no, Jacob, that was sarcasm, you jerk. And I'm like, oh, I haven't learned that part of scripture yet. But anyway, no, jokes aside, though, it's like obviously we're religious, of course, so that's our bias, but we should have an episode of a podcast where we just talk about, like, is the Bible provable from a secular perspective, right? Or can you prove the validity of it as the inspired word of God, or just that it's a holy book, or that it's got truth in it, or a lot of truth in it, or is the truth, right? That's come from God. Can you prove that with from a secular perspective? I'm kind of curious if we could do that, but maybe we could have a couple of my secular friends on, and maybe they could make that argument for their case, but or for the secular cause. But anyway, just kind of throwing out ideas there. But I think, sorry, I apologize. You were making a point, and I interrupted you there.
Well, actually, you didn't really interrupt me. I pretty much had made my
point. Oh, you did? Okay.
Like I said, yeah. The bottom line is, with our rights comes a corresponding responsibility, and if you claim something to be a right but it has no corresponding responsibility, then I'm sorry, folks, it ain't a right. Well,
it's I heard this. I don't remember who said this quote. I wrote this down, and I think I put it on my wall, and it's somewhere. It's somewhere. I've got a big. In my room, I've got like quotes all over my room, but you have but the quote went something like this. It said, "We have the freedom, as a human being, you have the freedom to choose make your own decisions, right? You have the freedom to choose your own path, but you do not have the freedom to choose your own consequences."
Yeah, that's one way to put it. But another thought that entered my head as you were saying it, and I can't remember who said it, or even the exact quote, but it went something to the effect of, evil has no rights.
Mm-hmm.
So just because you can do something doesn't mean you have the right to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, so it comes down to freedom being the correct exercise of free will. But if you're just using your free will, just willy-nilly, that's called license.
Right.
Which is somewhat ironic if you think about it, because generally when we say the word license, we think of a little permission slip that the government gives us to do something like driving or hunting and whatnot. But in this case, license means, as Aleister Crowley said, the founder of Satanism.
We're going to that.
Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Oh, sorry, you're saying Aleister Crowley, and I had to giggle there, but keep going.
Yeah, well, as his mantra says, license is, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. But
I heard somebody, it might have been Ravi Zacharias that said this, but somebody said this. I may not have been him or not, but somebody said, I think it was a Christian theologian that said how it goes is that either as a man, as a person, you look to God and say, thy will be done, or God looks to you and says, sort of puts his hands up and says, thy will be done. As in, if this is what you want, you can go do it, but that doesn't mean you're free of the consequences if you do something evil, because it's evil's either going to be something poisonous and self-destructive for you or another person, and most oftentimes it's both.
And even towards society as a whole, such as the adult video industry.
Right. I mean, right. Well, I mean, I remember this is a line from Ravi Zacharias. He said this, I think, on he said this on David Rubin's show. He said this last year, right before he passed away. And again, I should get like a plaque of Ravi Zacharias or a picture and just hanging up right behind me because I love the man so much. But he said something that when there's sort of 3 points of connection, right? There's when you're connected with God, you're connected with yourself, and when you're connected with yourself, you're connected with your fellow man, with society, right? With people, right? When you don't have a connection with God, you don't really have a true connection with yourself, and as a result, you don't have a connection with other people, or if you've got a bad connection, it all kind of ripples into each other, right? And I've often found that to be the case, most certainly, especially, I mean, you take a look at just people you've known, right? People that seem to be most either disturbed or just messed up, that just have a difficulty getting along or connecting with people at all, seem to have a very, very difficult time functioning as people, and it's almost like they have no connection with their inner selves, with the sort of the inner fiery gut voice that kind of tells you what you need to be doing, what you really are, what you ought to do. So it's your conscience, right? The voice of your conscience, like what ought you do? What's the right thing to do here that you innately know you should do and you should not blow off, or that you should go, what's your duty? What's your moral obligation? What are you really feeling? What do you need to kind of work through? What you need to cope with, right? It's almost like this whole society, human society just in general, like modern society, what do you want to call it? The way things are set up in the world right now is that everything out there, it's like you've got all these pressures. It almost seems like they're all designed to try to convince you that you should never trust your gut or your intuition, when it seems like your gut and your intuition is one of the best tools that we're hardwired with as people. Because it kind of tells you, like, not just who you are, right, but it also kind of tells you, it kind of helps you interpret something, like it kind of helps you sense something's wrong before you know it's wrong. If I'm getting into a confrontation with somebody, I'll just walk away when it hits me, when my gut kind of tells me time to walk away. It's like, oh, I know to trust that right now, and I'm going to do right that. And it's been very helpful. But it helps you navigate the waters.
I've had a couple of those times too. Yeah.
Yeah, it helps.
And sometimes I don't even listen.
Go ahead. I'm interrupting you.
No, I was just making an offhand comment. Just you're talking about thinking through the consequences. For example, getting into a confrontation, and I'm sitting here like, yeah, I should listen to that more often. I have a habit of being a bit of a firebrand. I've cooled off somewhat in recent years, but
just the exterior.
I've been known to cook off like a grenade, and I end up making the situation worse. But anyway.
Yeah, I used to be kind of like that too, of like knowing how angry I could be and knowing the level of aggression that that you're capable, that I'd be capable of, and like I know I can be a very, very violent, aggressive person. I know I have that capacity, right? I'm not saying that I am that person, but I know that I've sampled enough like raw aggression at certain points in my life where I'm like that. I've seen this also be really explosive in other people. I don't want to go there. It took a long time for me to kind of be able to not just make peace with my own anger, but just like have the fire, have the anger there, but how do you process it in a way that's healthy? And also you're listening to it in moments where it's like you need to stand up for yourself, right? And push back. And other times where you're deciding let a level head prevail and be angry later. And I'm not perfect, but it's like figuring that out versus like it's anger's wrong. You have to suppress it, and you can't feel it. And you can't. The things you can't feel, and there's things you can't experience, and you're not allowed to stand up for yourself. Go.
Well, I mean, it's okay to feel anger. It's what you do with it that could be.
Yeah, that's the key. That's honestly the key.
Which it actually ties into our discussion tonight because we're talking about some people. I'm not going to call out Antifa by name, but but you got people like as such as you find in Antifa. I feel this angry emotion, so I have to act out on it, and I have the right to act out on it. So I'm gonna. I see a guy wearing a red cap, not even a MAGA hat, just a red cap.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm gonna beat him within an inch of his life because, I have this emotion, and I can do whatever I want. I can beat him, in some cases even to the point of death.
Yeah.
But no, freedom comes with it a sense of self-control.
Yeah.
If you don't have that self-control, then then it's you find you lose your freedom pretty quick.
Right.
Either in the penitentiary or in some other.
Well,
way.
I think the biggest thing is that I'm gonna lean a little closer to the camera here. I think the biggest thing that's difficult is the underlying attitude, right? I know if you're maybe some of my more libertarian friends might say, well, you should have the ability to freely act out violence or freely go do what you want to go do whenever you want to. It's like, yeah, you have the freedom to do that, but like if people are able to be violent whenever they want to, right, and no one's protecting the weak, right, someone's got to step in and do something. Usually the state steps in to do that kind of thing, but and that's kind of a bigger discussion, but I thought I'd just point that just a little brief thought out there. But the thing I was going to say was that it's interesting with Antifa. For those aren't acquainted, it's an organization that takes its root in the 1930s of Germany. That it's a radical communist group of the ones in the 1930s and the one now, where they call themselves we're anti-fascists. We oppose fascism, and they're so it's like, well, of course, who doesn't want to oppose fascism? But then that's they trick you. They say we're good at pointing out what's wrong, but our solution to the problem is violence, abuse, and killing people that don't support us, which Antifa has been repeatedly doing over and over again, and still has not been condemned by, I think, as far as I'm aware, any mainstream Democratic candidates or politician. The media is completely silent on Antifa, versus like the inordinate amount of coverage you get on just Trump rallies. It's like, oh, they're all a bunch of fascist white supremacists. They stopped calling them white supremacists a while ago. Now they're just evil because they're Trump supporters. And it's like, oh, great. We've gotten beyond 2016's racism label. Like, you're just racist. That's what you are. It's like, oh, so who gives a... You have to bleep that one out, by the way. But, no, the thing I was going to say is that there's this underlying attitude of, like, a victimization of, like, I'm a victim and so therefore I'm justified in attacking you and abusing you and killing you if you think differently than me. If you're not just a Trump supporter. I mean, Antifa. I mean, I was reading InfoWars today just for headlines. That's kind of what I do when it's slow at work, among other news places. And they said like allegedly four members of Antifa members of Antifa had allegedly killed four Trump supporters in D.C. and the media is totally silent on it. Like, are you kidding me? But there's this attitude of like, I'm a victim or our cause is just and right. And so therefore all means, right? All means are justified as long as we win.
Yeah, the ends justify the means.
What's that?
Yeah, it's a very perverse mentality of, the ends justify the means. Which is a perverse mentality in and of itself, if you think about it.
Yeah, it is. Well, I think I heard Dinesh D'Souza, who's a conservative. I don't know how you describe him because I don't really know a whole lot about him. He's done conservative documentaries, but he said something like, of course the ends justify the means, because if the ends aren't important enough, then there's no point to the means. And like, I get what you're saying. He said this in a clip segment. And said, I get what you're saying, but there's a morality to it. There's an ethics to it, right? as long as we win in the end, it's okay how we win. And it's like, well, I understand what you're saying, but I can't agree. It's like, I mean, it's like, in order to win, as long as we win the game, we have to cheat, we have to lie, we have to break. Like if it's a hockey match, like let's melt the skating rink just around the other players, and make them trip and fall and beat the crap out of them. Which I know fights happen in hockey, but it's like it's cheating. We're going to use any methods necessary to achieve the end result. And why not kill the other team if that cheats us our final victory? And it's like, well, the whole reason of the game is that we're all agreeing to these rules, and because we're all following these rules, this structure, this good, healthy structure, we can actually have a game to play. If you cut that out, it's like, oh, why don't we just what? You know what? Forget hockey. Let's just replace the hockey sticks with automatic rifles and just have a World War II reenactment. How about that, boys? With real guns and real explosions. And you can be the Nazis, and you over there can be, let's see, well, we don't want to romanticize America because, yes, they did fight Nazis, but maybe instead, because we're trying to hate America, we'll say, who are the good guys? Oh, we could say communists. Yeah, let's say the communists. Yeah, so we'll have the communists who represent everything good and fantastic and non-Christian of society, and we'll have the fascists on the other side. Yes, that's what we'll do. Not that I would probably, I don't.
And if I remember, yeah.
What was that?
That would be interesting. I was say, that would be an interesting thought. If they say, they represent everything that's good and righteous, but I think the atrocities committed by the Soviets were vastly more than the few that were committed by the other allies. And there were atrocities committed by American forces and British forces, to be sure. But the atrocities committed by the Soviets was pretty much neck and neck with the atrocities committed by the Nazis.
Right. Because both are, I mean, not just that both are police states and both are totalitarian societies, not merely that, but you've got two societies that have decided in their revolutionary foundings that we do not want the Christian ethic in our society. We are founding our society on secular amoralism, that morals don't exist. I mean, you take a look at like the Bolsheviks, for example. They did not want any kind of religion of any kind in their society. They said, which is ironic because Bolshevism, Marxism is, in a lot of ways, it's like, we're replacing religion and getting rid of it forever. What will we replace it with, sir? More religion! But it's worse, and it kills more people than the religion we replace. And it's like, oh, that's great. Huge change there. But these is a society that said we don't believe in any kind of morality, and we don't believe in any like objective morals at all. There's the state, and there's no God, and so it's just man. It's just man, saving himself by his own bootstraps, pulling yourself up from your own bootstraps. It's like, well, the funny thing is that what people don't realize, when people say pull yourself up from your own bootstraps, like you can't actually physically. You're aware of that. Like, have you tried pulling yourself up from the straps of like a rubber-toed boot or like anything? It's like you can't pull up your whole freaking body, dude. That's the point of the joke.
I think I came close, but I had one heck of a headache.
Welcome back to 7 Amp Patrol. Just buy the zip of kind instead of all those laces. But anyway, that's like you said, it's neither here nor there. But it's just all these little fun little pieces in play. You can't be your own. You can't be your own definition of your own reference point, right? You need something to transcend and be able to mark you need some kind of reference point to mark that kind of transcends your own life, to kind of give you like a frame of reference for how you've traveled and like where you come from, who you are, where you're going, and what's your destination, right? If you got those things in mind, you've got a lot of clarity. If you don't have any of those things, you're kind of just like I said earlier, you're stuck and kind of swamped in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Would you bet money on our World War II space atomic billiards communism versus Nazism Part 2 hockey match?
You mean such a situation you were just describing a couple minutes
Yeah.
ago?
Who would you bet money on?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not, because that's one of the probably the most immoral thing I could think of tonight, next to abortion. I mean, you're betting and gambling on people killing each other. That's just all sorts of
I'm
wrong.
betting and gambling on everybody dying.
Even still.
Mike's over there throwing up, but I mean, obviously I'm kidding because we still.
Yeah, I figured you were kidding.
Oh, right, you gotta give me some crap for it, but just like surprise, everyone wins. Now instead of rifles, we're armed with nuclear missiles. Intercontinental ballistic missiles Part 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Well, yeah, that'll be the first and only Hunger Games match ever.
The first annual Hunger Games, and there's no second annual Hunger Games. That's funny.
Yeah, because there's no one to hold
Yeah.
it. Anyway, this is a nice conversation, and we might have to continue it again sometime, but we are sadly running low on time. So overall, our freedom is the correct exercise of free will, and with our rights come responsibilities. Remember that. So without further ado, Mr. Benks, your book quote, please.
All right, gotcha. All right. You have to bleep that one out. Can I just? I should just have hold up a sign. It's like, I'm about to swear. Make sure you censor this. Anyway, let's have a whole segment where I just drop a bunch of F bombs.
Oh, I'm gonna have.
Anyway.
Oh, don't do that to me, please.
Dude, that's why I don't swear, because I know you're gonna bleep it out, and I'm just like, oh, he's gonna hate me for editing this. So I kept it. I think I only swore. I swore accidentally twice, so that's 2 bleeps. I'll keep it at that. But anyway, so two little quotes by Chesterton from my book, G.K. Chesterton, the Apostle of Common Sense, by Dale Alquist. And he said, sometimes we sometimes hear it said that Christianity shook the world, but in Chesterton's view, Christianity did not shake the world; it steadied the world. And finally, he closes his chapter with this. He says, Chesterton writes, Christianity has died many times and risen again, for it had a God who knew the way out of the grave. We should have a segment on the resurrection of Christ, because that's the whole contingent point of Christianity. If Christ didn't rise again, there's nothing special about Christ.
That's going to be one interesting Easter episode.
Save it for Easter, he says. All right, last question for you, Mike. Should I try to fit this? Okay, you can't even see it, so you can't even agree. Should I try to once again fit this Amazonite sphere into my mouth? The answer is I don't have enough whiskey to try that again tonight. So don't even.
No. Niet. I don't know how many other languages I can pull out of my head.
You get this notch in my throat. What's that one line? I was watching. This is the last thing I'll say, then we'll close out. But I was watching Tim Pool having Alex Jones on his show again, and Alex is just a riot every single time he's on the show, and they're trying to keep him on track. And Alex would just look at the camera and just be like, I'm a gorilla. And then he like pound his fist on the table. It's like, I'm a gorilla, no! It's like, Alex, tell us about aliens. Oh, right. I'm going to definitively prove aliens exist. Anyway. I'm getting wound up.
That reminds me of something I was going to say.
Anyway, we need to wrap.
That reminds me of something I was going to say.
But yeah, we're good.
Well, when you're done laughing.
All right. I'm good. I'm done.
All right. That reminds me, I was gonna bring this up briefly in our beginning segment, because it's relatively unrelated, but Just a little something to lighten the mood. There's this new movie coming out. I don't know if you've seen the trailers for it, but it's called Nobody. And I guess it follows this guy who's either an assassin for the government or mafia or what have you. I don't know. I've only seen the trailer once. But it gets to this point where, and he's got a family now, and he's got a little daughter who's complaining. She says, someone stole her kitty cat bracelet. And a couple seconds later, he's yelling at a guy with a gun to the guy's head. He's yelling, "Give me the kitty cat bracelet! I want us."
You heard it here, folks. We got Mike to swear on air. Woo! Swearing. I should look.
Oh, you should hear me at work.
Just made that up.
But anyway, let's just say our goodbyes before we go completely.
Goodbye, farewell until we meet again. I'm always in a good mood on Sundays because I know I can sleep in until whenever the heck I want to tomorrow. It's funny, the guys at work is just like, "You had one sip of that monster and you're off the wall." I was like, no, I was already excited before the monster. The monster just helps. It's amplification. It's not the causation. I'm just in a good mood. It's always a good day on a Sunday.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. And that's a good note to end on. So thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you must, leave a comment. And, we had fun. We really did. So, good night, everybody. God bless.
Folks.
Hey, folks, if you liked what you saw, be sure to follow us on Facebook and now on Parler. God bless.